the Ohio Innocence Project on the University of Akron campus. I'm honored today to imposture Tanisha Pereira, who is unfortunately not able to join us. She is the president of our student organization we have freshly founded this year. Let me tell you about the Ohio Innocence Project in the words of Pierce Reed, the mastermind behind this event and many more amazing events to come this semester. The Ohio Innocence Project was founded in partnership with the University of Cincinnati College of Law in 2003. Since its founding, Ohio Innocence Project has freed over 30 Ohioans who served approximately 600 years for crimes they did not commit. OIP, that's the short version of Ohio Innocence Project, continues to devote itself to freeing people who are imprisoned for crimes they did not commit. A team of 5 lawyers and 20 law students investigate hundreds of claims each year. In addition, OIP advocates for legislation that reforms the criminal justice system to prevent wrongful convictions. OIP has been involved in major reform efforts in Ohio, including Senate Bill 77, which in 2010 mandated police departments to use best practices in witness interrogations, photo arrays, live lineups, and in collecting and preserving DNA evidence. More recently, OIP is instrumental to reform the compensation system for people who have been wrongfully convicted. OIP's most recent effort in Capitol Square is a bill that would require Ohio's law enforcement agents to record custodial interrogations. OIP's public education programs include work with professional organizations, community groups, and in high schools and colleges around the state. The largest education program is the OIPU network, including the chapter here at the University of Akron, as well as 10 other universities around the state. On behalf of OIP's Board of Advocates, staff, and clients, thank you for joining us today and taking time to learn about wrongful convictions. I'm going to be posting links for further resources and possibilities to be in touch, to get active in this, in Ohio Innocence Project and other co-sponsoring organizations, and hand it over now to Garrett Decker, our esteemed president of the Sociology Club at the University of Akron.
Hi, everybody. As Danny said, my name is Garrett Decker. I am the president of the Sociology Club here on Akron campus, but on behalf of all student organizations on campus, I just want to welcome everybody. Thank you to our wonderful speakers, Kwame, Marge, and Ricky. I extend the warmest welcome possible. Thank you to everybody for, muting their mics and stopping their video. Please remain respectful, but this is a conversation, so please post your questions into the chat and I will be delivering them at the end. And I'm going to pass it on to our speakers now.
Allison, are you there?
Yes, I think we were going to go to Marge, who said next. I think she's on mute. Let's see, I'll give her another couple of minutes to see if she's down. Go straight to Parole.
I'm here. Thank you. I'm sorry. I am pleased to have the opportunity to speak to all of you regarding the death penalty, regarding the innocent. We got some preliminaries together before we can hear from Kwame and Ricky Jackson. The United States of America has the death penalty in 28 states. In 22 states, we've abolished the death penalty, 10 of them since 2000. And Ohio is an active death penalty state in the sense that we have 140 people on death row in Ohio presently. We've executed 56 people. We've had actually 26 people are scheduled to be executed in the next 3 years. But Governor DeWine has seen appropriate, I agree, to delay executions until a proper method of execution can be found to exist that is not amounting to torture. That was the finding regarding the lethal injection cocktail and its effects in a federal case in Columbus last year. As a consequence of that, we've had no executions since 2018, but we do have people on death row, as I mentioned. And death row itself has had many people released from it due to their innocence. 9 of the persons that were sentenced to death in Ohio since 1974 have been found to be innocent, and we have 2 of them with us today to explore that particular devastating activity. We've got a lot of problems with the death penalty in Ohio, and I want to take a moment to remind ourselves that it's been an issue in the constitutional sense for quite some time. In fact, Justice Ginsburg, in one of her last opinions in this last term, joined with Justice Breyer in urging that the court rethink the death penalty because the experiment that they began in 1976 has proven to be not a reliable, fair, or consistent method of punishment. There are issues that come to play when we think about rethinking the death penalty. Many people start with, and we should, what societal purpose does it serve? Arguably, it's to be a deterrent, but if you compare actually the murder rates in the states around us that are not death penalty states, like New York and Michigan, their murder rates are lower than Ohio's, Indiana's, or Kentucky's, which all have the death penalty. In addition, studies have shown that there's no evidence that it in fact deters. The other argument tends to be retribution, that victims' family members, but increasingly victims' family members are reconciling to the notion that life imprisonment is a far better alternative. And saving the funds that are spent on death sentencing and devoting them to victims' family services, to solving cold cases where the family is still left without knowing who or why or how their family member was killed, would be much more suitable. Can someone turn down their audio, please? Turn off your audio so that we'll be able to be heard. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So when we look at the purposes that death penalty is to serve, as opposed to just having life imprisonment or life with imprisonment without parole, there's no actual convincing evidence that it's doing any good for society. And in the meantime, what problems do we have with it? Well, we mentioned innocence. We've had 9 exonerations from Ohio's death row, over 170 nationally. If you compare, we've had 56 executions. That means for every 6 people we've executed, 1 person has been released because of their innocence. And beyond that, we've had 21 clemencies in Ohio, many of them based on the fact of innocence or on the lack of appropriateness of this penalty. So when you think about where the mistakes are being made, we've got a lot of them being made here in Ohio. Beyond that, we've got issues of race and place. That seems to be more significant in choosing who gets death sentencing as opposed to life or a lesser penalty. We're going to explore, I would expect, but discriminatory actions seem to be part of the death penalty system, just as they seem to be systemically racist problems throughout the criminal justice system. And we can talk further about that. From the standpoint of problems with the death penalty, we also have the issue of cost. Cost is a big factor. We actually have found in studies done in Ohio that it may cost $3 million to execute an innocent individual, as opposed to far, far less, perhaps 1/10 the cost, to just bring a case to a life imprisonment situation. That was the result of a study down in just the trial phase in Akron, Ohio. It was over $200,000 to bring a case at the trial level to a death sentence imposed. With a life sentence, it was $19,000. So we're using a lot of funds that could be better spent on other forms of punishment and on other forms of law enforcement that could truly make a difference in crime rates. In addition to the cost factor, we have the problem that only 1 in 10 cases that are brought in Ohio end in a death sentence. So if you're looking at 1 in 10 cases expenditures and then 10 times the cost for getting that, you don't really have a system that makes fiscal sense. And increasingly, conservatives around the country are leading the charge to eliminate the death penalty, in large part because of the cost, and the cost in terms of the risk of executing innocent individuals. And with that, I will leave to Kwame and Ricky the opportunity to discuss this. Allison Walsh, would you like to make an introduction? Allison is with Witness to Innocence, a group that Kwame and Ricky are very involved in.
Sure, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I have the privilege of introducing our next two speakers, Ricky Jackson and Kwame Ajamu, who are members of Witness to Innocence. Kwame is our board chair, and Witness to Innocence is the only national organization that is comprised of and led by death row exonerees. And our mission is to abolish the death penalty using the voices and experiences and moral authority of people who have survived death row and people who are living proof that the system is very flawed and that the system, mistakes are made in the system. Innocent people are sent to die on death row. So I will turn it over next to Kwame and Ricky. Why don't we start with Kwame? I know he's on video. Kwame, could you take 20 minutes or so and introduce yourself and tell us about your case?
You'll have to unmute yourself, Kwame.
And you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Okay. I want to say first and foremost that it is an honor and a pleasure to be here. This is indeed a good moment in time for both death penalty abolition and for the world to take notice of all of the struggles of our human rights sacrifices in this life. In 1975, at just the tender age of 17 and Ricky 18, we were accosted by Cleveland Police Department, and my brother Wiley was 20 and charged with aggravated murder, tried and convicted as such, and sentenced to die. It would take all of 39 years to clear the three of our names by way of exoneration, and it would take yet the rest of our lives enduring the scars and the significant pains that we have suffered and our families endured. However, along the way, abolition came into our minds and hearts. And so here we are today, I as chairman of this extraordinary organization, and Ricky being one of the outstanding soldiers that he is in the movement around the world. I would like to say that in doing so today, having this discussion, there's many things that comes to mind, but I would like to focus, if I may, on the youth, the juvenile part of it, as I was but a child, 17 years old, and today there's a mandate, House Bill 136, I do believe, that's being presented to kind of save the youngsters and the mentally challenged from being sentenced to die in the state of Ohio. And this is dear to my heart, and so it's something that I'm going to bring to the forefront of my next endeavorments in the community. We are a passionate group. We are men who have suffered great losses, both in our families and the likelihoods of our personal. Um, but we soldier on. And each day that we come out into the world, well, now it's by virtual, we put all that we have into it, and we leave nothing on the table except for the answering of the questions that will come in the aftermath of these conversations. Uh, we mean wholeheartedly to express to you the undoubted troubles and the tremendous follies that have fell into place for the three of us during these terrible events in our lives. But its main focus is that you understand that the capital punishment is something that is not to be endured by no human being. That the death penalty in itself is a sentence that belittles humans, takes away all of your personalities, and belittles you into death in a corner. It is a constitutional right to have cruel and human punishment, not cruel and unhuman punishment. And so in 1978 was how Ricky and I were actually first came off of death row into prison population when Sandra Lockett filed a lawsuit against just cruel and inhuman punishment and won that case. So it is very, very important to understand the mental health issues, the tragic mental health issues. I have lived with men, and wow, it is so sad how even myself suffer from PTSD. And but there's some cases that are far worse than others. There are many cases that are worse than others. There are some men and women who have committed suicide based on PTSD, given these small cells and the situations presented them of being not guilty, but yet sentenced to die. So there's a lot of things going on in this world to help us stay focused on death penalty abolitions. And I think that the human factor is the best part of it. You can see from some brothers and sisters how these tragedies have broken us. I am a broken man. I will not ever disclaim that death row has broken every spirit in my body. However, the knowledge of abolition has given me an ability to fight far beyond what I would thought would have been imaginable. The education that I have attributed along the way has given me yet another reason to stand amongst the ranks of the many men and women before me and those who will come after me to abolish this dreadful thing that we as humans put upon ourselves. If I could change the world, it would be to have peace. It would be to have peace. It would be to have equality. Yeah. I want to thank you right now. I will come back, let Ricky get a word or two in. I'll come back.
Great. Thank you, Kwame. And do we have Ricky? Are you there? Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little about your case? Did we lose Ricky? Let's see. Why don't we give Ricky a couple minutes to see if we can get him connected. Kwame, in the meantime, why don't we just go back to you? I know you have a lot more that you can share with the group. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your fight for freedom and how you finally won exoneration in your case?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, great.
Can you guys hear me?
Ricky. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm a dinosaur when it comes to technology. But anyway, my name is Ricky Jackson, and just to expound on what Kwame said earlier about tragedy, 1975, the three of us Wiley Bridgman, Kwame, and myself were arrested and wrongly convicted of a crime, a heinous crime we didn't commit. I spent subsequently 39 years of my life in prison, 2.5 of those years having on death row, coming within 30 days of my own actual execution. If it weren't for the heroic efforts of people like yourselves on this panel and other death row advocates, we wouldn't be doing this interview today. You know, it could have easily have gone the other way. Needless to say, as you expounded on earlier, the death penalty serves no purpose whatsoever in our society. It's been proven that over and over again. But somehow we just gotten stuck on this hamster wheel and nobody seems to know how to get off. You know, when you can consider the fact, the financial factor, the impact it has on societies, because every time someone in society hears about a person being released from death row, a wrongly convicted person being released from death row, it takes something from us because we thought we had it right and we came that close to killing innocent people. And every day I wake up, my wife and I just had a new baby. And again, like I said, if it weren't for people out there on the front lines trying to abolish the death penalty all around the world, Kwame, Wiley, and myself, and a lot of other men and women out there wouldn't be here today. And we were totally innocent. We were totally innocent. I think the atmosphere right now is ripe for what we're doing, what we stand for, because people see injustice. You know, it's not just a racial or a class situation anymore. This is affecting our entire society. Everyone, every class, every race. When we get it wrong, it takes a little bit from everybody, from our whole society. That to know that we possibly could have killed some innocent people. And again, I can't say enough how grateful I am to people out there like Kwame and you guys all over the world that are fighting for innocent people to abolish the death penalty. It's a horrible, horrible act to be committed in humanity's name. We don't make ourselves better for this, you know. This doesn't make society better. It doesn't make the individual better. We just get stuck on this hamster wheel and nobody has the courage to say enough is enough. Well, enough is enough. Enough is enough. And once again, I can't reiterate enough how important it is right now to stand strong and to keep doing what we're doing, because there are still people languishing on death row. Every day, someone in America is being executed or coming close to the last day of their life, whether they're innocent or not innocent. We have to stand for these people and continue to stand for these people. When I think about the three of us sitting on death row, wondering if this was going to be our last year on earth, and I think about the position I'm in now and Kwame and the rest of the death row exonerees, it's just such a great blessing to know that people were out there fighting for us and believed in us and knew that we were perpetrating a terrible, terrible wrong against ourselves as citizens of this great country. I don't think that was quite 20 minutes, but that's all I got to say.
Kwame and Ricky, it might help if you gave some idea to all of us about how it was that you were wrongfully convicted, and how it came about that you were understandably recognized as innocent.
Certainly. Go ahead, Jack.
I'm sorry. This is the year 1975. There was a delicatessen in our neighborhood. Kwame, Wiley, and myself frequented this delicatessen a lot. I mean, it was right in our corner in our neighborhood. It was convenient. The proprietors of the store knew us by name, facial recognition. They knew where we lived. I mean, it was a neighborhood store. Everybody went there. On this particular day in 1975, May the 19th to be exact, a gentleman was robbed and accosted as he was leaving the store by 3 black men. He was beaten. Acid was thrown in his face, and eventually he was shot twice, where he expired on the scene. The 3 of us, Kwame, Wiley, and myself, were all together at that time, and so being that this was a neighborhood store, the news spread quickly, and we heard about it. We decided to go up there and be looky-loos like the rest of the neighbors would. And we got up there, and there was a police presence, a lot of people in the neighborhood. I even saw the young man who would eventually be our accuser and almost our executioner at the crime at the time, but we didn't think anything of it. We were innocent. We were just standing up there looking around like everybody else. We stayed up there for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then we eventually left. Couple of days, fast forward to a few days later, the 3 of us are like fleas on a dog. We were always together all the time, everywhere. Either they slept at my house or I slept at their house. So if you found us, you found the other 2. That's how we were. And we were on our way home, and we decided to crash at the Bridgman's house. And it wasn't even a good 20, 15 minutes when we had laid down, and the front door burst in. All I flashlights, shotguns, and a lot of racial slurs. Freeze, nigga, don't move, get on the ground. And needless to say, we were all totally shocked. Kwame's mother, who was what was Mama's? How old was Mom at the time? Well, she was in her.
She was 56. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I had to mute. She was 56.
Yeah. And she was, she was sick, and they threw her on the ground. They treated her like she was a wanted felon, and eventually they rounded the 3 of us up, took us outside. And I only lived a couple of 100 feet from the Bridgmans, and I happened to look down the street as I was coming out in handcuffs, and I saw my entire family, my mother, my sisters and brothers, my dad, all laying down in the dirt with shotguns pointed at their heads. And
Must have been hard.
I just can't erase that image from my mind even to this day. Eventually we got downtown, and we were still confused as to why we were here, what was going on. And we were taken into a police lineup. After the lineup, I distinctly heard the police officer say that he didn't pick anybody, and so I was like, great, okay. We get our obligatory phone call. I called my mom, and she was on the way to get us. Because we all knew at this time that this was a terrible mistake. We didn't know what exactly, but we weren't the culprits. We knew it for a fact that it wasn't us. But long story short, as Kwame alluded to earlier, we went to court. We got tried. We got convicted, and we got sent to death row on no physical evidence whatsoever. They were ready to throw all our lives away on the testimony, contradictory, questionable testimony of a 13-year-old child. They were that ready to throw our lives away on that kind of evidence. No physical evidence, no corroborating witnesses to back this kid's story up, just this one little boy. This one testimony that was riddled with inconsistencies and changing of stories and times and dates. But it didn't matter. None of that mattered. We ended up on death row based on absolutely nothing. It was that easy. It was going to be that easy to take our lives.
How did it come to pass that innocence was understood?
So it would take maybe 30 years to actually get to the truth. However, I want to interject and go back just a little bit there with where Ricky had left off, telling you about this kid and the situation here. You have to remember that of the three of us, I was the one considered also as a juvenile, and didn't go for the ride with Ricky and my brother to the Cuyahoga County Jail. I went instead south of them to the Juvenile Detention Center, where I would later be written into the script. At that particular time, Ricky, I would find out that Ricky and my brother had actually had warrants for them. As I said, it would take 12 days of my being in juvenile detention that they wrote me into the script as being one of the collaborators in this atrocity towards Mr. Harold Franks. But what is really sad about this whole incident was this kid also was 12 years old who had been victimized in a bad way himself. What happened was when he wasn't able to recognize or identify both Ricky Jackson and Wiley Brisman there at the lineup, it wasn't that he wasn't able to identify them. He knew exactly who they were, but he also knew that they were innocent and it wasn't therefore guilty. And thus, when he called his mom and told her that, she told him, well, you should tell the truth. And so that's what he told him. Well, no, I don't see nobody that did it. But what made him change his mind is the part. I have a 5-minute and 21-second video that I use for just this particular thing: false witness identification and police coercion. And so what happened was that when he came out of that interrogation room after saying that he did not recognize both Wiley Brisman and Ricky Jackson as being the perpetrators of the crime, they told him in turn, well, you're a child and we can't charge you with perjury, but we can go and charge your mom. Well, his mother, Susan Vernon, was in the hospital, University Circles, dying at that particular time of ovarian cancer, which didn't come out until years later, right? But they knew it. We didn't know it. And they used that as a ward or a shield against this 12-year-old kid and made him change his story in that interrogation room to say that Ricky Jackson and Wiley Brisman were in fact guilty of this crime, and thus later on, Ronnie Brisman as well. So I just want to bring you up right there so that we have that whole circle of understanding on how that kid got right there. And so we would go to prison. We would be jacked up in every way, from having no counsel representation to just flat out being railroaded in prison. And we would go and be sentenced to die. And it would take a number of years to get off death row. And we would go through the system. I actually made a parole before our exoneration. I actually went through the system and made a parole, leaving my brothers, Wiley Brisman and Ricky Jackson, to still be incarcerated for 11 years thereafter until the exonerations came down. So, for us, this is not just a beat in the path or to say 39 years, in passing. This is something that actually took a lifetime and a whole lot of praying and crying and sacrificing. And we actually had to see our parents go into the ground with the ugly stigma of their boys being sentenced to die for a crime that we didn't do. And so in all of this rigmarole that goes on, came the justice, but it's never not such thing as being too late, because I learned one time in reading that good news from afar is like cool water to the thirsty. You see, and so if you can just touch that, the ambiance of what that truly means, it's like when you sacrifice something in essence of truth, the value will always be there the value will always be. And in this sense, there came those exonerations, and these boys were once freed, who had been, with us freed, who had been once a sacrificial lamb, you know. And so we carried on, and we marched forth, and we became soldiers in the abolitionary movement. And we moved to the forefront of this movement. And every day we do exactly what we do now. We put out our hearts and our souls, and we give all that we can to see that this movement and that these things never happen to other boys in the community.
We had to. We didn't have a choice. We didn't have a choice. This was thrust upon us.
Yeah.
You know, this was thrust upon us because this changed the course of our lives so drastically. You know, we didn't have a choice. We grew up in this pretty much. We lived it. We came close to the brink, you know, and somehow we will be able to take step back and turn in the other direction, you know. But I don't know how you could go through this and not want to be a part of making a change. I don't know how you could do it. I don't know how you could do it, you know, because Kwame, he knows what it's like to sit in that cell 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, you know, and just be inside your own head, man. While you see your family grow up, your parents move on, your parents die, you know, your brothers and sisters having children, becoming grandchildren, and you see this all from your death row cell. You know, their brother know what it's like, and a lot of them do, you know, a lot of them do. But it's so important what we're doing, Kwame, especially in the forefront out there. You know, I've been in Columbus talking to legislatures all around the country, even to Hawaii, you know, and I was flabbergasted to think that this is paradise. But injustice is everywhere. Injustice is everywhere. Inequality is everywhere. You know, even in paradise, even in Hawaii, you know, they needed an Innocence project. I couldn't believe it. In Hawaii, but injustice is everywhere, man. And it's just a testament to the people like Kwame and the other brothers and sisters out there, man. It's just like not forgetting the people that's left behind and the people that still may have to go through this, man. You know, because it fundamentally, like Kwame was alluding to, changes you forever. Forever. There's no recovery. There's no recovery. I mean, you can't be made whole. Can you heal? To a certain extent, yes, you can. But can you be made whole? No, you can't. You can't, you know? And so that's why it's so important to us, having gone through that ordeal. We don't want to see people go through that, man. You know? And for me personally, guilty or innocent, man, you know, there's a lot to be learned from both experiences. Why are we destroying so much, man? Why are we so quick to destroy? You know? Why are we so quick to destroy, man? You know? Especially life, something that we didn't create, man. You know? And once we do that dirty deed, how can we make that whole? When we kill an innocent person, post-mortem say, oh, we forgive you. We made a mistake. Let's eliminate the need to make a mistake. Let them live. There's alternatives. You know, there's alternatives, man.
There, it does appear too that there's some additional disparity going on here with who is sentenced to death beyond the questions of race and, beyond the questions of innocence. There are questions of race and place. I mentioned earlier that played out in Ohio just as it does everywhere else, but nationally, 41% of death row is African American.
Oh, no
Ohio,
doubt.
it's 58%, far exceeding any proportion reasonably likely to be a product of a fair process. what we seem to see is that those who are African American who are alleged to have killed white individual are 3 to 4 times more likely to receive the death sentence. And that seems to be true across the country, not just in Ohio.
That is
There
a
is
very
an
true.
effort at the statewide level now. Justice O'Connor and Justice Donnelly are putting
Mhm.
together a statewide database for sentencing to try and address the possible disparities. But they're more acutely seen, it seems to me, on death row than anywhere else in the country or in the state.
True that. I like to say, you have people say, oh, we don't have problems with race. And I tell you that human beings, not just a certain area, not, Connecticut, so to speak, but human beings have been so racially, mentally endowed and crossbreeded in the fact that they think that the color of a person's skin is important or not, so much so that we put it in everything that's in our existence. You can't even go get a slice of cake without it being racially oriented. Believe it or not, what do you call white cake? Angel food. And what do you call chocolate cake? Devil food. You see, we put it even in food and don't even realize it. So naturally, if we come down to the actual hue on a physical person, it's going to be outrageous that we have this. And when we allow certain brothers and sisters to take that devilment, now I'm going to give you that. I'll take you to the scriptures where the Satan, the Iblis, the devil, the one that was made to rule the earth, said unto his Majesty God, what do you mean you made something better than me in the human form? I'll not bother him. I was made of smokeless fire, right? I'm better. So if you have a better than ideology, it didn't come before the, see, it did not come before the devil, and therefore everything you thinking is devil meant. Evil worship on earth. Racism will always be a part of our lives, and it's so bad that it is an atrocity that ends the lives of people who have darker colored skin in so many ways. Either you're in prison for a number of years, either you're disenfranchised, you're redlined in your livelihood in your life, and you don't have a way to make it out of that cesspool that you're in, or you're shot dead in the streets. It's just so man. I remember growing up in the 60s, they had the Zippo lighter click where they'd kill a black man in the streets and say, we thought he had a gun, and then click, click, it was the Zippo lighter he had in his pocket, and just now it's the cell phone and just on and on and on. This all racially based, and it goes back to that piece of cake. It goes back to that piece of cake. Caucasian people made band-aids to go over the skin, and what did they write on their skin tone? Well, everybody is not the color of a band-aid, but we know that this is racial inherited. So you have to realize that it's a condition now. It's no longer a situation, it's a condition. And you can always change a condition if you change within you. First and foremost, you have to you to change it around you. You see, and so yes, I understand. I understand much that this element of racism and why and what it does to us, especially on being the person that I am and what I have suffered in my life, what I've seen others suffer like me. But that's not going to deter us. We're at the cuff now. I say this is the best time ever to speak out against all of these things that we see in our society that is tearing us down as a people. This is the greatest time ever to say, stop being a bigot. Stop being a bigot. Stop having those kind of conscientious thoughts against another man or another woman. That is a child. Can't you love a child as you would love any other?
Yes, when I talk to classes about the historical underpinnings of race in the criminal justice system, I think one of the things that gets through to them is just look at what happened after the Civil War, when in the South, in Georgia particularly, where a lot of the studies have been done showing the discriminatory impact of the death penalty on African Americans, they actually had it on the face of their statutes. If you raped a white woman, it was a capital death row offense. If you raped an African American woman, it was a misdemeanor.
Misdemeanor.
A misdemeanor, a slap on the wrist.
How many
So
people
when
are
we
on
ask
death
about
row?
whether Black Lives Matter and that issue of white victims becoming the more, those who killed a white victim are far more likely to receive the death sentence. It doesn't take very much to connect those historical points to today's world, sadly.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. But like Kwame was alluding to, I mean, that we understand that racism is systemic in this country. He alluded to the angel food cake and the chocolate cake. It's about what we're taught. It's about what we consume mentally and our psyche, you know, and this has been our inheritance in America, unfortunately. But we have the power and the voice to change that. You know, anything can be changed. I don't believe that there's nothing that can be changed. I don't believe that, you know, and it's just a matter of re-educating our neighbors, you know, our fellow Americans and the entire world. You know, it's just a matter of re-educating. That's like they was educated to think like that. People can be re-educated to unthink like that, you know, and we have to continue to step forward, you know, and push our issues out there and don't be silent, you know. Don't be silent. Wherever this tragedy is about to occur or has occurred, we need to be there, you know, guilty or innocent. We need to be there, you know, their voices need to be heard because I honestly believe in my heart the vast majority of Americans do not want this. They do not want this, you know, even if they've involved personally, you know, if tragedy has touched their lives, they do not want this because this is not a deterrent to anything. This only this only deepens the wound. This is not a deterrent to anything, you know. But like I say, we're stuck on this hamster wheel, and nobody's brave enough to say, "Hold up, man, let's stop. Let's analyze what we're doing. What are we really doing here?" You know.
Well, that does bring some hope because the persons who remain in government or have achieved their highest levels in government, Supreme Court justices, attorney generals, former governors, are all at the point now where they're realizing the law that they helped to craft in 1978, following the striking down of the statute you two were convicted under. They are realizing that the statute is not working as they expected. They are asking for reforms. They want to have the severely mentally ill excluded from execution, which all of the people listening, you could write your state legislators, particularly state senators, about SB 54, which would take off those individuals who are suffering from serious mental illness at the time of the
not to
crime.
interrupt you, but and look, we've gotten away from the root cause of the problem. You know, before we even get to the execution stage, you know, all this money and resources we putting into housing people on death row for decades, you know, setting up the execution chamber, stay of execution, stays here, stays there, all over the country, all this money and resources we just forgot about. Let's go back to the root of the problem, you know, the societal ills that get us to this point of having to execute our citizens, you know. I mean, what happened to that? You know, what happened to going back to that and preventive medicine? What about that, you know?
Yeah, the majority of those 10 states that have abolished in the last 10 years or in the last 20 years have done so because of cost and the risk of convicting and executing an innocent individual. And when you two were talking about that, you know, there seems to be clear evidence that we have executed innocent people. Cameron Todd Willingham, any of you have seen the trial by fire that goes through that case? There's several others in Texas and others in other parts of the country. The estimates are that we have maybe 4% of death row is innocent. And if
A
you
lot
think
more
about
we'll
it,
never ever hear about.
right. And even if you did, 4%, if we had 4% of planes crashing, what would we be doing with the airline system?
Right, shutting
We'd be
them down.
grounding planes and saying, we have a
Exactly.
problem. And increasingly, other states are recognizing that's the problem they've got. With that and cost factors to boot, you just don't make sense out of this system. And they have been abolishing at a regular rate. And I agree with you. Ohio's primed and ready. And increasingly, those people, as I said, who wrote the statute are coming to that conclusion.
Yes, I've heard a lot of governors and former executives who were staunch death opponents, over the years, looking at the legislation and how it's applied, race definitely has a big play in this, demographics, where you live, when we were on death row, there are a few white guys, no Hispanic people, but majority of them were black. Same thing in prison populations all over the country. That's no big secret, and all of this has a part in, determining who gets sentenced to death row and who doesn't. With the evidence they had against Wiley, Kwame, and myself, there is no way 3 white boys would have went to death row. No way. No way on God's green earth they would have went to death row. They wouldn't. The grand would have laughed them out of the chambers. You got what? But because this was a white citizen and 3 black Negroes, I'm saying, the evidence was like I said, it was non-existent almost. They pretty much kidnapped us, took us away from our families, destroyed our family unity, and tried to kill us based on absolutely nothing. That's how easy it could have been.
Should we move to some questions? I know there have been some.
Yes, please.
Who wants to take on posing the questions? Allison or?
I have a ton of questions. I've been recording them from our chat, and there have been some amazing questions. So thank you to everybody who posted. I'm going to start with this one. What would you say to youth with interest in the criminal justice system, and what should they know?
Well,
go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the first thing that I would say to a young man or a woman that has an interest in the criminal justice system is also to find you someone to liken that interest to, in terms of a good tutor or a person to look up to, a mentor, so to speak, that you might get the proper knowledge going forward in this battle. If you want to endeavor all the way into what we do in the movement, in the abolition movement, it's all about what's within you. I refer you to one of the books that I read while doing my incarceration, which kind of made me see things differently. Was written by a fellow by the name of George Jackson, and the book entitled Soledad Brothers. And it is a combination of letters to and from prison. But in one of his correspondence, he wrote that the situation, prison itself, would either destroy you or bring out the very best that is within. And this is something that I live by today in 2020. Having achieved so much that I have in the field of circumstance. And by that, I mean coming from death row in ignorance into now being the chairman of a national, international organization of its own kind, knowing the difference between not having an idea when those cops first grabbed us up, and now knowing that there's so many preludes to why this could have happened to me. It is very important for that young man or young woman to know that there are extreme circumstances that can happen in your life that is not a casualty simply by going to the store. And we would like for you to look further into all of your community endeavorments, and especially, like I said, people like Marks and even you, Jared, would be a good mentor for these young boys and girls in the universities who have a mind like and as such. That would be my response.
Wonderful. That was amazing. Our next question is, you guys both mentioned the atmosphere today, and my question is, what can we do to capitalize on this, continue the conversation that we have started today?
First of all, you have to know what you're asking for. You know, you got a lot of people in the streets yelling slogans and carrying signs, but what do we really want?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we at the end of the day have been made a lot of noise, burnt up a lot of shit, and tomorrow we wake up and it's still the same old status quo. You know, so we have to be careful about first and foremost, be involved, get involved. The days of sitting back and letting people make decisions for you politically, socially, economically are over. You know, you have to be involved. And I applaud young people today because they have so much on their shoulders now, you know, and my generation, you know, we had our parents that went out there and did that stuff while we sat on the sidelines and watched and reaped benefits. But you guys are out there, you're covering the stories, you're writing the stories, your people's voices are being heard because of you guys, the young generation. And it's important. I can't I can't say that word for shit. But anyway, I can't say it enough. You know, you have to get out there, man. You have to know what's going on nowadays. You don't have the luxury of sitting back and letting your parents make the decisions about what's going on today. You have to know what's going on. You have to be involved as much as you can, you know, as much as your ability allows you to.
Yeah. I've been working with the group Ohioans to Stop Executions, one of the co-sponsors of today's talk, and there are materials at the link that is set up in your chat box for a lot of materials about the death penalty in Ohio and around the country and why repeal makes sense at this point. A lot of facts and figures to help you sort through where and how these mistakes get made and how much level of unfairness seems to be creeping in and staying within the system.
Yeah, there's a I don't know, youngsters today. This is when I say that this is the right time. What I mean is that we're living in a time of technology where, you know, when I was a kid, you couldn't click a button and get an answer. And now you can get not only an answer but a great litany of answers. So we're living in a time where everything is not only expedient, but it is immediately expedient. And so with the ideology that you young guys have today, you know, and the fact that you have a fearless mentality, this is just great for this moment in time, because nothing can be more comprehensible to a young man or woman than telling them that you can and you will endure or survive this for instance, this plague that we have right now. Your young people think that, you know, they can just do it. You know, we have to direct them in the right way, but you understand what I mean? Their mind is set that they can do this, you see. And so if you gear them in the right way, intelligently, with the already the tools that they have and that big heart and that big desire, you know, all we have is a need to feel that. And I think that they're going to do really good. I really do. Yeah, this is the time. This is the time to bring all of your how would you say,
fervor and passion.
Exactly. It's that time. Yeah. You see, I'm starting to have amnesia or whatever you call it.
The websites are otse.org for Ohioans to Stop Executions. The Death Penalty Information Center is an award-winning collection of data on everything relating to the death penalty. Witness to Innocence. It's Witness WTI, isn't it, Kwame?
Yes.
WTI.org.
WTI.org.
And we have the Ohio Innocence Project and the National Innocence Project as well.
Correct.
So that information is available at the link that was sent out in the chat. Garrett, were there some other questions?
Yes, plenty. Let's move on to, okay, so what alternative would be the best to replace the death penalty in your guys' opinion?
As I stated earlier, we've forgotten about, we like to put a Band-Aid on everything. What happened to going back to the beginning? And, if you understand that something could escalate and potentially be worse, wouldn't it behoove you to go back and say, like, okay, let's stop it right here at the beginning? You know what I'm saying? And before we even get to prison, arrest, prison, and execution. You know what I'm saying? Go back to these communities, go back to these families, man, and find out, okay, why is this happening? Why did this guy have to go out and rob somebody and kill somebody and do this in the first place? I mean, to a lot of people that might sound like some bleeding heart liberal stuff, but it's worked. It's worked. You know what I'm saying? In every life, if you have a problem, the first thing you want to do is go like, let's go back to the beginning and find out what happened. Why the corn didn't grow here? Why did the calf not be born? Let's go back to the beginning, to our children, to our roots, to our community, to our neighborhoods, before we get to arrest, prison, death row.
I like that analogy. But if we get past all that and they want to sentence you to die, which is what we hate and what we fight against, the only alternative, and they're trying to push it now, is another thing that is going to be challenged as we move forward, which LWOP, man, I don't even like saying that. But I think that is a practice that is being talked about around the country as an alternative to actually committing what do you call legal murder, which is the sentence of life without parole. I have to tell you that I see that as slow death. I see that as yet another form of execution. However, one is not dead. And I'm quite sure that just as we have over time commuted ways to actually have a death penalty abolition, there will be some recourse for a person sentenced to life without parole. But I don't see, we're certainly not going to let them go, you see. And so this, I think, is what is being talked about. Marge, I'm quite sure you've heard about these things.
Life without parole is where.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I have to hug my son. He just got out of school. Okay, beat it.
You can stay and listen, Ricky. Life without parole is where many of the states that have abolished have gone to for their maximum sentence. But increasingly, they're recognizing as well that we're all more than the worst thing we ever did. That's the way Sister Helen put it.
Right.
And I think it's totally correct. I mean, if all of us were going to be judged by the worst thing we ever did in our lives, and that was all that we were going to be judged on, how many of us would get up in the morning and try and make a better day? I mean,
I think we've come in close to like really actually hitting a wall as far as the criminal justice conversation is concerned. I really do, because we've run out of probable solutions. We really have. We've run out of probable solution. And personally, like I said, I think it all comes down to going back to the root of the problem. You know, all this money, effort that we dump into the corrections facilities, the criminal justice system, will be far better served if we start putting it back in our communities and doing preventative maintenance before we get to the arrest, the prison, and then death row.
Because the crime may not occur. We may be able to diminish the number of crimes.
Exactly. We trying to fix it after it's already said and done. Okay, this is our final solution. You know, let's kill them. You know, because we don't know what else to do. You know, we don't know how to fix the problem, so let's execute them. You know, let's kill them. Let's just get them out, get rid of them. But there's another child coming. There's another child coming right behind the guy you just executed. You know, all these resources we wasting every year in these correctional facilities and these death rows. You know, why not divert some of that money, resources, and effort into the grassroots? You know, why wouldn't you try to stop it before you even get to that point?
Well, I fully expect that even in the life without parole situations, we will be finding, just as they have with respect to juveniles, that there needs to be a periodic review to determine whether that makes sense any longer.
Right.
I mean, you look at all the developed countries. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kwame. Sorry.
No, that was Ricky speaking.
Sorry.
No, I was just allude to the fact that you look at all of the so-called quote-unquote developed countries, you know, especially in Europe, and the countries that are overwhelmingly doing better are the ones that dump their resources, their efforts into their citizens, you know, into their children, into the women of their society, you know. And they don't have the problems that we have in the West today, you know. You got some countries in Europe that only have one prison in the whole country. You know, one prison. You know? So it's about community efforts from the top down. You know what I'm saying? And so again, I keep saying it, we don't get to this point of arrest, prison, possibly death row. You know? We're looking to try to stop the problem after it's already happened. Let's try to prevent the problem before it does happen. And we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We wouldn't be having men and women sitting on death row, innocent or not, you know, if this is their last day. We will move on past that and become the kind of people and society that we were meant to be. Because we're never going to achieve that until we stop executing people, until we stop murdering people. Legally sanctioned, as Kwame said, until we stop doing that, we're never going to progress. I guarantee it. We're never going to move past that.
It's hard to argue that we're teaching people that killing is wrong by killing people.
Exactly.
It doesn't send that message of preserving life or finding another way to solve a dispute than violence.
Exactly. It's a hard argument to swallow when the law says that, and our religious leaders say, and culture says that, you know, life is precious, but here our government is executing people. You know, how do you make that balance? How do you figure that out? You know,
it's hard to reconcile.
It is.
Garrett, were there some other questions?
Yeah. So how has the criminal justice system improved since 1975 when you guys were imprisoned?
How has it been?
In my opinion, it hasn't improved. They've just gotten clever in what they do. You know, it hasn't improved. You know, the overwhelming majority of prison population is still African American. You know, guys in prison, it's almost impossible to get a parole. You know, it's just the same. What I see personally is just the same old hide and seek game. You know, they paint the storefront up, but it's still the same old storefront. Nothing's changed as far as I'm concerned, personally. That's just my opinion. You know.
Your hide and seek comment reminds me of Justice Ginsburg's ruling in a 2004 case where, like in yours, the government hid the evidence that was showing innocence. And she put it very well. She said, the rule is not that the government may hide and the defendant must seek. That is not tenable in a system consistent with the Constitution and due process of law.
Exactly.
I think that there's been more attention to enforcing the constitutional commands that protect people from wrongful conviction, but it hasn't made enough of a difference to warrant continuing with the risk of executing innocent people.
Exactly.
It just hasn't. It just
In as
hasn't. We've made some improvements, but and in terms of court review, it's even harder to get review in the courts of these kinds of questions than it was in the 70s.
Exactly. Exactly.
in as much as we stomp the grounds, Jared, and come up with these brilliant organizations and people to stand in line, there is still today as we speak so many of the old guard and the stomping measures in place. I guess the most obvious from then to now is that how can we progress when for every time that there is one stride in the abolition movement, there's at least two institutions being built to house people in these facilities. So, no, I don't think that we're going forward in a good way in that sense. We're going forward in a great way in the sense that everybody is becoming more socially adapt to the goings-ons and how to connect with each other. We have a broader sense of expressing our communications and understandings, but at the same time, the opposition is gearing up as well. You see, where in 1975 there was a small number of correctional institutions to deal with. And now there's in the early 30s, like maybe 32 institutions across the state of Ohio, and as many as 34 at one time, I do believe. So,
we have more prisons per capita than
yeah,
any place on the planet Earth.
Yep.
Really,
So-
was that in the 90s?
yeah,
They had 3 prisons in one location all around Ohio. It was like a prison camp.
right. And so that's one thing to consider when you look at the movement and how we have been circulated by these happenstance. I'm really looking forward to that changing as we go forward. But in closing down some of these institutions, especially the ones that they had made privatized, and we know about. I have some friends and associates that are in some of those institutions now that I hear from on a regular basis. And so the treatment there is already ill within the system itself, and so now with there out being any government shift into these private institutions, it's far worse. So that's another measure because even though the scope may be at the top of the scope is capital punishment, wrongful incarceration, mass incarceration, this is still a human rights thing that we're talking about. This is still an atrocity against human beings. This is still a situation that a man or woman is pitted into against his or her will. And so this is still a matter of urgency for this abolitionist movement. And I'm so glad we're talking about that at this very moment because maybe there's someone in the audience, even amongst the students, who will take it home and say, hey, Dad, they was talking about how the institutions have gotten big over the years, and there's so many of them. And then maybe there might be somebody in there and say, you know what, maybe we're right, and we ought to go back and, talk about how we can break down some of this stuff and come on to being a better occurrence. Because like you just heard Ricky say, and I'm sure the state of Ohio has just under California in terms of actual physical penal institutions, and that's insane. That is insane. Since the time I went to prison, I think they've erected 12 more. Yeah.
I have one more for you guys. So what do you think are some of the biggest reasons why people get wrongfully convicted, And what can we as a community do to help people who are a victim of wrongful convictions?
Can I answer that, please? First of all, you guys need to read Mark Gossie's book. You know, it's a great book. It's about, it gives you the insight on, um, he's a professor at the University of Cincinnati. Um, it gives you a great insight on the evidence, the junk evidence, really, junk science, as he calls it, that has been used for decades to send, especially African Americans, to prison for life and death row. You know, some, and like I said, the criteria that was used to send Kwame Wiley and myself to prison and a lot of others, the bar was so low back at that time that it was just so easy. I mean, you talking about electrocuting somebody at that time, which is like basically torture. You know, they shave your head, they put this steel cap on you, they strap you down, and there's electrodes touching your skin. There's no guarantee that you're going to die the first time. You know what I'm saying? There's no guarantee that this is going to happen. And it's just very barbaric, man. You know, it really is, you know?
Yeah. In Mark Gossie's book, as you mentioned, Mark tells that story from the perspective of before he became someone involved with the Innocence Project.
Exactly. He was a prosecutor. Yes, exactly. He was a federal prosecutor. And he knew all the tricks and the ins and outs of the trade, so to speak, as to how to gain an easy conviction. You know, as a defendant, I'm basically going in there armed with my lawyer. You know, as a prosecutor, you got the whole barrage of state assets at your disposal. You know, you got the police, you know, you got EMS, you got everything at your disposal. And so it's a monumental battle trying to overcome all of that. It is, as a defendant, and we didn't have a chance. You know, we didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting found not guilty. We were, first of all, strike number one, we were black. Strike number two, we didn't have a paid lawyer. Strike number three, we didn't know anything about the criminal justice system whatsoever. You know, in 1975, police and the black community's relationship was like China and the United States is today, pretty much. It was non-existent. We didn't communicate with them, they didn't communicate with us, you know. And so this allowed them to do the kind of things that they perpetrated on us and a lot of other people in this country.
If I might interject in there, we come out of an era. First and foremost, we come out of an era in the city of Cleveland that was getting itself back on its feet from having suffered two racial discrepancies, 1966,
Right.
67, and 1968. And so right around 1975, when we went to prison, it should be noted that the city of Cleveland was steeped still in these racial disparities, and that the police force was a force of its own, governed by then prosecutor John T. Corrigan, who had been a strong arm in not only the city of Cleveland, but really around the state of Ohio as such. So moving forward, we suffer so many things. You know, what makes capital punishment, you know, the disparities of race, social creed, money, and the elements. But I will tell you that with all of these different things going on in that particular area, capital punishment is totally, without a doubt, unfair. You heard when we first started how Marge was speaking about how there are 88 counties in the state of Ohio, and how certain counties would attribute certain things to this or that in this movement. Well, you need to know that it's only of the 88 counties in the state of Ohio, it's maybe 6, I'm gonna say 7 at the most, that actually will administer capital punishment in its case. Most of the rural counties, if you go down to Pike County where those 8 people were murdered, and we know that the best friends did it, none of those people received the death penalty. And so this in itself is unfair. And that is totally the absolute truth as to why this cannot happen. If the capital punishment could be in every courtroom in all 88 counties, then we would deal with it on another issue. But because it's not, and it only hits 6 or maybe 7 counties of the 88 counties, we know that it is 150% unfair. And then we deal with everything else, the disparities, the racial, but first and foremost, it is unfair because it doesn't cap all of the counties of which it is a portion.
Because those communities, if their crime happens in, like you said, one of these communities, they are going to actually get a jury of their peers,
Right.
But our crime happened in Cuyahoga County. How many jurors do you think were from Cuyahoga County? How many juries for Huff, Wade Park, Superior, Euclid?
Before we
0. All these people were from Pepper Pike, Parma, Lakewood. And how can these people be our peers? They don't live with us, they don't shop with us, they don't do business with us, their kids don't go to our kids' schools. So how can we be peers?
There's a lot of this about prosecutorial discretion in the individual counties. And one of the recommendations, this is the Ohio Supreme Court's Death Penalty Task Force report, came out in 2014. One of their recommendations that was to try and get rid of these disparities by having a committee at the Attorney General's office in the middle of the state that would review every potential death penalty case, which is the way the feds do it. The federal U.S. attorney can't pursue death unless he's gotten approval from the Justice Department in Washington.
The feds almost never ever get it wrong. I mean, it's sad to say that, but they do their job. They do their job,
And if they were reviewing statewide, we might be able to cure some of these levels of inconsistent practice among the 88 counties. But actually, this was the one item that the prosecutors that were on the task force fought against the hardest. They did not want to, even though the task force did eventually recommend it, they did not want to have this done. And I'm confident that it will be still the most fought after thing because the local
I bet they did
want to be able to make this decision without any encumbrances. And sadly, there are these geographic disparities that are highly significant that really do contribute to a problem. You've got the same state law around the state, but it's interpreted differently and they decide differently.
I want to tell you on an ending note on that same subject. Witness to Innocence, we have workshops. And this particular workshop that we have on that subject is accuracy and justice. And what we do with this workshop, accuracy and justice, which is very, very successful, I might add, is that we dialogue with prosecutions. And we have been all around the United States of America. I'm due in California, I think the 29th, if I'm not certain, or the 1st, for a Zoom conference as such. But we have a panel situation set up where they come in as a prosecution, and of course we are representing from death penalty abolitionists. And we have a dialogue, actually, which is something that's never been done before with prosecution and the defense, to broaden the understanding of, like Ricky was saying in the forefront, going back to what happens. Well, this in effect gives the prosecution a chance to understand better the course that the defense has to take, and thus we can stop those little 1 sheets of paper from being held in his office for 16 years, and any other form of misconduct or illicit forms of his or her duties in office. And as I say, we have a very successful rate. We try to engage at least twice a month anywhere where we have. Like I said, the next time will be for me, and my particular crew will be in California. I'm trying to get San Francisco, just have come up with the integrity out there. So I think that maybe next month we'll be knocking on their door to see if they want to, do battle with some boys and girls that really have some message to give them.
Yeah, the task force that I was mentioning did look into trying to get better quality evidence in capital cases. And
Exactly.
I mean, we find that mistaken eyewitness identification is really common. I mean, you think about how many times when we could go out, when we were at the airport or something, and you'd see someone, down the ways, and you say, oh, it's my friend or acquaintance so-and-so. And then, as you got closer, you realized it wasn't them at all.
I mean,
That
when you
stuff
talking,
happens. The Uncle Vin, the my cousin Vinny thing happened.
right?
And
I mean, when you're talking about committing the ultimate act, I mean, to this individual, which is everything, his life, the bar should be so high,
that's not enough.
I mean, the bar should be so high that, I mean, all these criteria should have to be met before you even consider, taking someone's life, man. That it should be just like prosecutors should look at it like, okay, well, he doesn't meet he may be guilty of the crime, but he doesn't meet all these other criteria.
To get to the death penalty.
And exactly, like I alluded to earlier, in our case, there was the criteria was like an ant could have got up under it, and an ant couldn't have got up under it. That's how low it was, I should say. There was absolutely nothing. You talking about destroying 3 individuals, 3 human beings, 3 families, which in effect it affected our community. It really did. It devastated our community. To take 3 young men, vibrant young men out of that community, it made everybody feel vulnerable. Because like if it was that easy, it could be that easy for me, and somebody I know.
One of the other recommendations of the Death Penalty Task Force of the Supreme Court was that we adopt a statute that Maryland had before Maryland ended up abolishing. But the statute required that in order to seek death, the prosecutor had to have a voluntary recorded confession, DNA evidence, strong biological evidence, or an actual videotape of the defendant committing the crime. And if you didn't have that, yes, you could pursue aggravated murder with specifications. You could get a life sentence. But if you didn't have all of those,
but you know what would make it so much simpler and easier?
You had to get to death. You had to have it to get to death.
Abolish the death penalty.
It is simpler. And that's what Maryland did after that statute was in effect for, think about a year.
The death penalty.
Yeah.
That would take all of it off the table. You could redirect your resources, and like I said, get back to the root of the problem,
You're so right, Ricky. So right. Are there any other questions, Garrett?
Just one last one. When our last couple minutes, what can we do from today after this conversation? What can we do in our daily actions that can kind of help spread awareness? And this is linked to a question from Marge about what were you talking about writing the senators for? It was like a law for mentally ill.
Yeah, there's a bill in the Senate. It's already passed the House. So we just need to get it to the floor of the Senate where it can be voted on and approved, which it will be if it gets to the floor vote. It's SB 54, and it would exclude the seriously mentally ill at the time of their crime from being eligible for death sentencing. They again could still be convicted and sentenced to a life type term, but they could not receive the death penalty. And Kwame, do you want to talk about the other bill?
So yeah, that's Senate Bill 136, which is pretty much the same thing. It's just a bit broader, and it goes on to ask you actually who I can't say this president's name. What's the president's name there in the Senate? Oh, how you say his name?
Obhoff.
Yeah. That's who we want to call. That's who we want to contact and ask about these bills.
I don't mean to be splitting hairs, but My primary focus, I mean, when I say splitting hairs, I'm talking about the mentally ill, Black people, Hispanic people, white people, whatever. But my primary focus is abolishing the death penalty, period. I mean, period. You know,
And there
and
is
then
going to be a bill.
we won't have to worry about the mentally ill, Black people, whatever, people living in certain demographics. You know, when you start talking about particular groups like the mentally ill, okay, well, to me, what I'm hearing is that it's okay to still perform executions provided that this person is not mentally ill.
Right.
You know?
It was one of the
And I don't mean to be
task force.
disrespectful of his efforts in doing so, but my primary focus is on let's get rid of it. And then we won't have to table this discussion any longer, whether the person is mentally ill or whatever. You know, let's do this first. Let's get rid of this. Let's take this off the table. You know, and then we don't have this conversation. You know, and everybody's on equal footing, whether they're mentally ill, Black, white, whatever. You know, we don't have a death penalty to worry about no more. So let's start dealing with the social problem, the social ill that get us to the arrest, prison, and possibly execution.
I'm with you. And I think the bill that is doing that would be abolishing, is Senate Bill 296. I'm pretty sure that's the number.
Exactly. That's the number.
Pending. Yeah.
Is that a bill that, what's her name, Mickey?
Antonio? Antonio?
Can't think of her name right now.
Antonio, I think.
Nikki.
Nikki Antonio. Yeah, I think it's hers and Niraj. Yeah.
And one last thing, from me at least, if everybody could please fill out the survey that is in the chat. 2, there are links in the chat that everybody should check out. It's just links that from everything that was mentioned during this wonderful conversation. And a thank you to everybody who participated today.
Thank you. I'd like to thank our host. You did a great job moderating.
Thank you all for listening, and take advantage of the materials that are at the web-based center. Resource list.
Say hi, Uncle Kwame. Say hi to your uncle. Sorry.
It was great seeing both of you again. Thanks, Kwame.
Thank you guys so much for having us. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, lovely Rose.
They said your name, baby. Look, they said your name.
It's John, Ricky.
Hey, oh, okay. Hey, John. How you doing, buddy?
Love you, dude.
Let's say the John.
All right, guys. I still have to get out of here, guys. I have a 6 o'clock appointment I have to get to.
All right, love you, man. Take care. Stay safe. God bless.
Beautiful baby. Beautiful baby. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for having us. We appreciate everything. Thank you so much.
Take care.